Thank you, Irina, and good morning to everyone. I'm Martin Bogdan, Project Officer in Academic Cooperation Association, and welcome to this session on Key Actions 2 and 3. In this session, we will have a chance to hear what are the novelties, but also what are the continuities in the respective key actions of the Erasmus Plus program, both for this year and in the program as a whole. They will be covered from two perspectives. One will focus on cooperation among higher education institutions in program countries, and the second one will focus on the cooperation among higher education institutions between program countries and in partner countries. This brings us to the two speakers in the panel, whom I'm very happy to introduce, Nadia Manzoni and Deirdre Lennan. Nadia Manzoni is a new team leader in the higher education unit of DG EAC, who is responsible for translating European higher education policies into the Erasmus Plus program. As a policy officer, Nadia has a long-standing experience with the Erasmus program in the European Commission. Deirdre Lennan is an international cooperation officer in DG EAC, also involved in international dimension of Erasmus Plus, in particular in capacity building in higher education, and she also covers all development related issues for the DG. Before giving the floor to the speakers, I would like to invite you to raise your questions to the speakers in the Q&A box of this webinar and to use the chat for interaction among participants. Also, for those of you who are active on Twitter, don't forget to tweet by using the hashtag #AkaWhat'sNew. After hearing the presentations, we will have ample time for discussion. We will start with Nadia's presentation, focusing on cooperation in program countries, and then we will move on to Deirdre, who will give us the international perspective. Nadia, congratulations on the new position, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and happy to be here to talk about Key Action 2 and Key Action 3 novelties in the Erasmus Plus program. These novelties are underpinned by a whole series of new policies that you are all familiar with in the education, skills and research area, and that jointly lead to a more successful digital and green transition, which is the overriding policy framework. In particular in higher education, and this is very important for Key Action 2, it is key that all the cooperation partnerships and all the projects between higher education institutions do lead to tangible results in one of these specific priorities that have been identified. They concern, again, the interconnectedness, the innovation aspect, the inclusion aspect, and the aspect of digitalization, because even though they've been around for a while, these are goals that have still not really been achieved. So for interconnectedness, the partnership should be strengthened, should be more strategic. In terms of innovation, the learning and teaching should be further modernized and further stimulated for innovation, and also oriented towards societal challenges. Teachers should be rewarded for excellent teaching more than they are today. In terms of inclusion, there's still a way to go to make higher education more accessible, and also to make our mobilities within the Erasmus Plus program more accessible. And finally, the digital skills need to continue improving, and also the technologies used in teaching and learning are in need of further digitalization. So these priorities, it's very important that the cooperation partnerships and other forms of cooperation financed through Key Action 2 lead in one way or the other to one or several of these objectives. What is new in the new Erasmus Plus program from 2021 to 2027 is the sheer range of cooperation models in Key Action 2. So some of these models have existed before, but are meanwhile improved or more streamlined. And here you see those that are particularly important for higher education. And I excluded, for instance, small scale partnerships or teacher academies or centers of excellence in VET, because these are targeted more to the vocational education and training sector. What is the difference between all these forms of cooperation? Well, it's the level of ambition and the level of joint long-term strategy that the higher education institutions that are cooperating are willing to take. So on the one hand, we have what used to be strategic partnerships, which are now called cooperation partnerships, and which are on the lower end in terms of ambition and long-term strategy. And somewhere in the middle, under partnerships for innovation, as we call them, we have alliances for innovation. So really targeting the entrepreneurial, innovative side of institutions, and the forward-looking cooperation projects, which some of you may be aware used to be in Key Action 3 before. And as we climb up the level of ambition and level of jointness in the way the curricula are designed, the way the institutional strategies are formulated, we come to Erasmus Mundus, which is very familiar, and finally to European universities. And jointly we call them partnerships for excellence. And now let me spend a few minutes going into each of these. First of all, what are the novelties in the strategic partnerships and currently called cooperation partnerships? They continue to be focused on increasing the quality of work and practices in the institutions that are participating, and they continue to build capacity for these institutions to work across borders. But what is reinforced is this link between the overall policy priorities that I mentioned before and the concrete projects. So it will be very important to link the two in the applications. And another thing I would like to stress is the need to have or to demonstrate tangible and transferable results by using the project platform and looking at what were the past projects that were funded, because we believe there is a lot of there was a lot of potential to transfer lessons learned from projects that were previously financed and that is untapped, that is somewhere the knowledge is not transferred to other institutions. In addition, there's been some minor tweaks compared to the previous years in terms of the flexibility of the project structure and some simplification of terminology that I'm sure everybody will welcome. Then the alliances for innovation are about bringing together the private sector and higher education institution and developing entrepreneurial mindsets and new skills in that area. And they are targeting particular skills mismatches in areas where there are skills mismatches, and then trying to plug those gaps through cooperation with the private sector. Forward-looking projects remain pretty much like they were before. They are larger scale projects, and they test innovative policy approaches. So they are focused on this policy element in relation to the other cooperation projects. So they're testing solutions with a view to them having a more systemic impact, not just in the cooperation partnership. And then let me say a few words about the European universities. So far, there are 284 higher education institutions involved in 41 alliances from 31 European countries. So it's a very impressive number. Even though in this year, 2021, we will not have any calls to further finance European universities, we are monitoring these 41 alliances that have already been awarded very closely, and actually working very closely with them on their needs, including their needs for sustainable funding. And certainly as of 2022, there will be another call for the development or continuation of European universities. Over the course of the next 3 months, there will be some intensive working groups or intensive work in working groups to discuss this next year's call. So it will be very much in the spirit of co-creation that this new funding opportunity will be designed. And just to have a quick mention on Key Action 3, not so many novelties that we can single out here, but I would like to stress how important it is that that these results are disseminated and that they have this strong component of transferability and lessons learned that can then be fed into policy at EU level. And we have several very good examples. The latest one is in the micro-credentials world, where successful Key Action 3 projects that were able to demonstrate interest of the stakeholder community and that had a very good product have been upscaled and taken up at European level. Thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing and hearing your questions. Thank you.
Nadia, thank you very much for your presentation. I already have many questions myself, but for now I will just keep them in my head. And I would like to thank the audience for the questions that are coming in. So please keep them coming as we are transitioning now from the program countries to the partner countries of the Erasmus program. And the questions will be raised later in the Q&A session. So without further ado, Deirdre, the floor is yours.
Good morning. My name is Deirdre Lennan. I work at the International Cooperation Unit of DG Education and Culture, and I'm going to be talking about the actions under Key Action 2 and 3, principally focusing on partner countries across the world. You will have heard yesterday that the next phase of Erasmus Plus is going to offer more opportunities for international cooperation. So in particular, just to summarize, there'll be a degree in credit mobility in higher education, learning mobility in the field of vocational education and training, youth and sports, so with partner countries. We'll also have the capacity building in higher education that most of you know, but we'll also be expanding to vocational education, training, youth and sports. And we continue the Jean Monnet activities with partner universities across the world. The focus today is principally on Key Action 2. And here I'd like to talk in particular about the Erasmus Mundus action and the capacity building action. You'll see here from the graphic that the Erasmus Mundus action is situated, so to say, amongst the partnerships for excellence dimension of Key Action 2, whilst the capacity building action is situated under partnerships for cooperation. The first call, which is due out now in 2021, will only include the Erasmus Mundus action, but I wanted to give you already some indications of what's planned for the future for the capacity building action. And we're working, hoping that the second call will be able to include this action. Erasmus Mundus under the next phase. Now we're aiming to make it more strategic, so the institutional cooperation will be more present within the Erasmus Mundus action. And we're aiming to open it more. So on the one hand, outreach to universities, regions, countries who are less involved in the previous phase, and also an enhanced role for our partner countries in the action. In line with a lot of other actions of the programme, we've also made an effort to make it more flexible, simplification, some of the rules, the financial arrangements that are being made available, and to make the action more attractive and sustainable for beyond the financing of the European Union. The main novelty is that there's going to be 2 lots for the Erasmus Mundus action. The first lot are the Erasmus Mundus Joint Masters. And these are similar to what you know. So we foresee continuity in this case. There will be some changes, such as, the notion of preparatory year. We're not going to talk about that anymore, but we're going to talk about preparatory activities to set up, to get the joint master intakes running. And we're also going to talk about editions for the intakes. And there'll be much more emphasis on all enrolled students on the program. So not so much just the scholarship students, but all students that have been enrolled on the program. And there'll be also more opportunities for partner country higher education institutions, insofar as they'll be able to submit applications also. There'll be a simplification on the rules related to participation of scholars in the teaching of the programs, and also the rules on the nationalities of students in the program. Now, the new measure that's being introduced are what we call the Erasmus Mundus design measures. And this is one of the measures supporting the diversity of the joint master programs that are on offer. So what we would like to do here is to support the development of new master programs. So universities will be able to get together to work on setting up the joint master program, which can then be fully implemented through a joint master's afterwards. The main objectives of the joint masters remain the same as in the previous phase. So to support quality, innovation, excellence, and internationalization of universities through academic cooperation. Our aim is to enhance the quality and attractiveness of the European higher education area, to enhance synergies between higher education, innovation, and research, respond to social and labor market needs, and improve the competences and skills of the graduates, and also to be perceived as a stronger global actor, the EU as a stronger global actor. So we would, through partnerships with universities in partner countries, but also the fact that we are attracting talent, young students, offering scholarships from all the partner countries across the world, we would expect our partner countries to look to the EU as a reliable partner. And we're also obviously aiming to support human development in the partner countries. The setup, the arrangements for the joint masters under the 2021-27 period, there'll be some modifications, as I mentioned before, in terms of simplification. Here, the grant agreement will be a fixed grant agreement for 6 years, independently of how long the master itself will be. There'll be 3 unit costs, basically, implementation costs, which are supporting the universities, scholarships for the students, and then in particular to support perhaps more disadvantaged groups of students, support to individual needs. And then we'll have the contribution for scholarships from certain regions of the world. So we're still expecting a contribution from the external instruments of the European Union. These will not be available in the first call, but we expect them to be made available in the subsequent calls. Universities will make a commitment to enroll a certain number of students, and then will be expected to run at least 4 master editions. And the first edition should be no later than the academic year following the project selection. And we're no longer going to insist on minimum numbers of weeks for scholars. And the geographical balance, before there was the requirement to have no more than 3 persons from the same nationality in a cohort, well, now we're asking that no more than 10% of the total scholarships go to the same nationality, which will be easier to manage. The design measures. We expect after a design measure that everything will be put in place to be able to offer a joint master program afterwards. So the universities will be working on program design, on procedures, on administrative and financial management, on the services that they're going to be offering to students, on how to promote the master program, disseminate, and the agreements for the partnership itself and for the students, and to work on the degree policy and begin the accreditation process. So these will be the outcomes expected of the design measures. And the setup, it's one university which will mobilize a group of other universities, which will ultimately be the joint master consortium in a subsequent phase, but they will receive a lump sum contribution of up to 55,000 euros for a fixed duration of 15 months. Now, the timeline for this, for the Erasmus Mundus call for proposals, the first call, when published, we foresee a budget of approximately 98 million euro, which would finance 25 joint masters and offer approximately 60 scholarships. And the design measures, there'll be a budget of approximately 2 million euro, aiming to finance approximately 36 projects. Again, this is all indicative at this stage and pending various approval procedures. On capacity building in higher education, so as I mentioned before, there'll be no call in 2021, but I wanted to give your organizations an indication of where we're planning to go. The action will remain very similar to what it was in the past, but we're hoping to emphasize much more the institutional systemic approach of this action. Inclusiveness, so we would very much like to attract universities that perhaps found the action rather overwhelming and were not feeling confident to apply successfully. And there'll be a much stronger link with the Commission priorities in the future. In particular, to give you more precise details at least, we're going to set up three strands, three types of projects. So the first strand will be smaller, the projects will be smaller, and basically they're targeting in particular newcomers to the action and countries and regions, partner countries and regions, universities outside the capital, remote universities such like, to attract them into the program. So the procedures, the process will be easier. Then we'll have the strand 2, which is very similar to the joint projects that many of you know. So similar level of funding, projects that are expecting to have an impact at university level. And then the third strand will be at policy level. The impact is expected at policy level. So what is currently known as the structural projects. So they will continue as before. One thing that I think would be important to say, for the projects that were before, like aiming at curriculum development, at reforming teaching programs, what we expect now is really that these projects take a much wider approach to their work. In particular, it's not only the teaching program that would be addressed, but also the whole interaction between the university and its wider socio-economic environment. So we want to see much more involvement of students on the one half, but also of the labor market, of the community, of the stakeholders, in order to ensure really that the developments that are done in the framework of the project are relevant to immediate needs. There'll be also quite a strong focus, as I mentioned, on the overarching priorities of the Commission. So we're really looking as to how the higher education can respond and support recovery and development, sustainable development in the partner countries. And then the last action that I wanted to mention, a bit as a parenthesis, again, it's not planned to introduce this action in this call in 2021, but I thought it would be interesting for those universities who are also working in the field of vocational education and training, is that we'll be introducing a similar type of action to capacity building in higher education, but in this case, it would be for vocational education and training. So these will be partnerships of vet providers cooperating together to support partner countries align the programs and the offer of their vocational education training schools to labor market needs in the countries. So these projects will be supporting management, new practices, pedagogy, quality assurance, such like curriculum development, working with the partners, working with the labour market, and staff retraining. So this is another action which I think could be of interest to your member organisations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Deirdre. And now we will transition to the Q&A part of this session. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Q&A part of the Key Actions 2 and 3 sessions. I'm very happy to see that many questions are coming in, and we had also many questions relevant for this panel yesterday in the previous panels, which were not picked up. So I'm happy to say that today is your lucky day. We have been taking notes, and I have incorporated them, and I will raise them today with our speakers. Next to Nadia and Deirdre, who are presenting the Key Actions 2 and 3 in the European higher education and the international dimension. I'm also happy to welcome here their colleague from the European Commission, Fanny Lacroix-Demaz, who is working on the more specifically on Key Action 2, who is here with us today to answer some of the more specific questions. So welcome everyone, and I think we can dive in straight to the questions. The way I have foreseen the next 45 minutes, I think we can quickly confirm the information about the new calls, because there has been many questions yesterday. Some of them were answered already in your presentations, but just so everyone is on the same page, can you please confirm that, as far as I understand, Key Action 2 call will go ahead this year, Key Action 3 will not, but I would like to give the floor to you, maybe just to clarify this for everyone so that this is clear. So please, Nadia, if you want.
Hi, good morning. So just to clarify, the cooperation partnerships calls are going ahead this year. There was a question of whether the deadlines will be shorter. As you know, everything is delayed this year. We don't yet have the exact deadline, but I think as a matter of precaution, I would say that institutions should be ready to prepare the applications a bit faster than in the past. There is no European universities call in 2021, but there will be one in 2022. So we are on pause this year to let the previous generations of European universities finish their project duration. There will also be a call for what used to be the Knowledge Alliances, but are now Alliances for Innovation. And then I can, no forward-looking cooperation projects. And I can pass on to Deirdre on her side.
Thank you. Yes, for the international actions, Erasmus Mundus will be included in this call. The capacity building actions, so capacity building for higher education, vet, youth and sports, capacity building for higher education and vet that I mentioned in my presentation will not be launched. This call will be launched hopefully in the next call when the funding has arrived.
Thank you very much. I hope the question on the calls now is clarified and clear. And now we can dive into the specific questions that were coming in, and we will follow the structure that you had with your presentation. So we will start with less ambitious initiatives, and then we will move on to the big ones, such as the Erasmus Mundus Joint Masters and the European universities. Therefore, I would like to start with the question on the cooperation partnerships. There have been many very specific questions in the Q&A box, mainly asking for the explanation on the new terminology that might come in. What does simplification mean? Will the terminology, the technical terminology and the intellectual output still be the same, or will it change? And also there was a question if you could elaborate on what does tangible results means and the work packages and so on. So please, Nadia or Fanny, who would like to
Fanny.
Yeah.
Yes, hello everyone. We will not talk anymore about intellectual outputs. We will use the more general terminology project results. And we will also not speak anymore of dissemination, but we will use sharing and promoting. So there are the main changes that were requested by former applicants, because apparently these terms were not well understood in many countries. For tangible results, we prefer to have tangible results. It's not impossible to have intangible results, so exchange of good practices and so on, but we would prefer to have tangible results.
And perhaps we can also give some indication of what could be the so-called tangible project results. I mean, this is not new for those who were working in partnerships before, but maybe it's worth repeating. We're talking here of joint study program curricula, for instance, pedagogical materials, open educational resources, IT tools, certain analyses, studies, peer learning methods, methodology guidelines, and so on. Of course, in line with the policy priorities that were presented at the beginning.
Thank you very much. I hope this clarifies a bit. And there was also a question on if you could confirm which actions will be decentralized and which ones will be centralized. So if you could elaborate on this. Yes. And there was a question from yesterday, which is a very specific one for cooperation partnerships. And the question goes, will learning, teaching and training activities still be there as part of Key Action 2 projects, considering that there is a separate action on intensive blended programs? So then we can transition to that.
So there will be, so the cooperation partnership will be mainly decentralized, except for those submitted by European NGOs, will have to be submitted to the executive agency, so IAKIA. And yeah.
What does it stand for, European NGO? Could you elaborate what?
I mean, we will provide a very precise definition. I don't have it right now, so I prefer not to enter into details, but it's, you know, umbrella organization, you can imagine.
Okay.
So it is to avoid that all these projects who are submitted by European NGOs prevent, because they were submitted in the Belgium national agencies, and to avoid that these agencies are overloaded with a project from these European NGOs, preventing the Belgian organization to apply. So it was decided that this project will be submitted to the executive agency.
I understand. This makes sense. Thank you. I think we can move on, looking at the time now, to the Alliances for Innovation, as they are called. Now, there was a question, if you could elaborate maybe a little bit on the structure and what is the cooperation foreseen with between higher education and the vet sector. Does this mean that the projects will need to include both, and how will this be managed?
Yes, this is a centralized action, and the link to the previous question. And yes, in the partnership, there will need to be at least one higher education institution and one vocational education and training institution. So this was a specific question, I think, in the chat on this. And the aims are, I mean, always very similar to the cooperation partnerships, but there is a bigger focus on skills development, targeting skills mismatches in sectors where they exist, cooperating on building this entrepreneurial spirit of the institutions, connecting with the private sector and private businesses on. So the focus is slightly different, and there is a focus also on sectorial skills. Working within the sector in large partnerships to define what skills are still needed and how they can be developed in certain areas of the industry, certain industries that are sort of the target industries of the EU.
And I suppose this relates also to the horizontal priorities, the 5 horizontal priorities of the call, right? The innovation.
You mean digitalization and yes. Well, those that we presented at the beginning of my presentation, they are specifically targeting cooperation partnerships.
And not other actions, okay? Because I was also wondering if the forward-looking projects, which are more often have an experimental nature, if they will need to follow those horizontal priorities, or there is some flexibility which you have indicated in your presentation. But I would just to be on the.
For now, those priorities are specifically for this year's cooperation partnerships.
Okay.
And yeah.
So next year we could have different priorities, perhaps.
Yes. They are priorities that don't change from year to year. They are based on the analysis of needs in the EU. So I wouldn't expect something hugely radically different, but.
Yes. Especially with the European Green Deal, I think this kind of gives a framework for the next couple of years. Thank you very much. Now we can move to the European universities, and we can also tackle European universities later with the Erasmus Mundus once we kind of go through the international dimensions. But now there was a few questions on the call, which is announced in 2022, and I understand it is not very clear if this call will be for the new alliances being formed, or will this be a call for the existing alliances that will work further together?
Yeah, it's a very good question. It's good that we have a chance to clarify this. So it's both. So the aim is to, on the one hand, provide sustainable funding for existing European University alliances. We are really cooperating very closely with their coordinators and their rectors, and it is very clear that in order to establish such a ambitious cooperation, you need to know many years in advance how much funding you have available and how you will spend it. And this is very clear. So from the beginning, it was agreed that sustainable funding will be provided. The modalities for this are not defined yet. Like I mentioned, we will not define them ourselves. This will be defined together with the representatives of existing European University alliances. And really over the course of next weeks, there's a whole range of meetings about that, in the next months. So how this sustainable funding, on the basis of which formula this will be sort of dispersed, that is really not defined yet. So we have a whole year to work on this until next year. On the other hand, we were clear from the start that this initiative is not an elitist initiative in the EU, but that the aim is to continue being to spreading it and have the door open for new alliances. So there will definitely also have to be funding for entirely new alliances who will have a lot to learn from the previous ones. But again, the modalities we still need to be discussed. There is really not much there at the moment.
Okay, thank you. But I think it's very useful to know so that so that people in the community can start, discussing amongst each other and preparing maybe activities for the call. So thank you very much. Just one more question before we move to Deirdre, which I feel is by now being left aside. So there was a question on if you could elaborate on the key action free, because and there was this rumor that was mentioned in the chat about the funding line on enhancing mobility in the area of public administration. So could you say anything about this? And if you could give any information on key action free, additional information.
Shall I reply or?
Please do.
Okay, I thought it was for Deirdre.
No, this
Okay.
before Deirdre, sorry.
No, but I can confirm on the policy experimentation. Yes. So in this year, there is no call on policy experimentation in higher education. It will continue to exist. So it will be similar to what it was in the past, which is supporting policy reform in education, training, and youth fields, and it will be targeted to supporting European policy development. So not just local or national policy development, but it's a large partnership and a testing of a policy idea that could have an impact at European level and could be taken up by the European Commission. But this year there is no call planned for that. I'm not sure I caught the rumor though, so if you could maybe repeat that, because I'm not knowledgeable on that.
I'm just transmitting what was in the chat. So about a new funding line established under Key Action Free that would enhance mobility in the area of public administration. So maybe this part of the.
I'm afraid I don't know anything about that. No.
Rumors. Okay, thank you. I would move on now to the international cooperation and give the floor to Deirdre a little bit. There has been a question already yesterday and it was posed again today. And this is the question, if there will be any changes to the network of Erasmus Plus offices in partner countries outside the EU. I think this is very relevant also for the national agencies.
Yeah, on that, I mean, I can't say anything, I can't confirm anything because, the financing of the offices has been done with the external instruments and we still don't have confirmation of the programming there. But I can say that we're working on two scenarios, one of which, would be a model which can use where there exist offices is to continue to use that type of function, and where there aren't offices, so in the rest of the world basically, is to have a focal point model. So the idea would be to have on a volunteer basis people in each partner country, which would then could be trained and bring support to the program at local level. So that's the working scenario at the moment.
Thank you for your answer, and we hope that that this will become clear soon. There was also a few questions yesterday, but also I see them coming today. It's about different eligibility criteria when it comes to international cooperation. So there was a question if it's going to be possible to participate for higher education institutions from partner countries in cooperation projects. There was also a question on the partners from Region 4. So this would be Russian federations, more specifically, if they would be able to lead Key Action 2 consortia. And we also had questions on the UK's participation in the program. I know this is a tough nut to crack still. So if you could give us some updates on this, Deirdre.
Yeah. On the UK, I mean, I think, discussions are still underway. The door is open in that sense. For the, as things stand, Jean Monnet actions allow for participation of the UK. So the UK is a non-associated country in that sense. That's where we stand at the moment. And Erasmus Mundus is also a possibility. So no further news than that. Russia, we're waiting for guidelines from the external services as to, one is the sort of nomenclature of the regions, because there are some countries that are considered now as having graduated, as being middle income or higher income, etc. So there's a whole sort of classification that we need clarification to still, and if there are any restrictions or guidelines, so to say, concerning one or other country, and that would be something that might affect the possibility of applying, of being the applicant for an action. And on the cooperation actions, yes, those projects are open to partner countries in the same way as in the past. So insofar as they bring an added value to the project. So I hope that answers those questions.
Thank you. Yes, and when we talk about the cooperation with partner countries in specific regions, we're talking about the entire program. Is that correct? Because we have a question.
That's right. Yeah, I think there are some actions where there's where we continue with the focus on the neighborhood and Western Balkans. So they're there that they can participate. They're directly targeted, so to say, in addition to the associated countries. But then there are other actions which are open to whichever partner country, and the cooperation projects are in this category.
Yes, thank you. And I'm trying to transition now to Erasmus Mundus Joint Masters, also with this question, and we have one also in the Q&A box. If there will be any specific regions to focus for Erasmus Mundus Joint Masters?
For the joint, so the first thing is that the novelty is that the partner countries will be able to apply for this action. That's one point. The second point is that the call that is coming out this year will probably include some additional funds for from the external instruments. We're not able to confirm exactly how much, because there are some legal issues still being considered, but that will increase the number of scholarships that are available compared to what I have put in my presentation as the official line, and that's one point. I've got lost. Sorry, I've forgotten what the initial question was. Martin, can you help me there?
Yeah, if there will be any specific regions to focus for Erasmus Mundus Joint.
Yeah. So, sorry. No. The answer is no. So it is based really on the universities, wishes to collaborate together, and this action is principally the master programs are principally funded by the Erasmus budget. So the additional funding that will come, the bulk of it will come in the following call, in the 2022 call, and that will be that will be to finance the scholarships for students from the given regions. So it doesn't affect the joint master per se. It's just to give additional scholarships to people from those regions. So
for scholarships and not for the cooperation.
Yeah. Exactly.
Thank you. There's a lot of interest actually in the Erasmus Mundus Joint Masters, which I'm very happy to see. So maybe we can combine the two positions now, the two perspectives now, with the question on the Erasmus Mundus Joint Masters calls, which is coming out soon. So the question is also how this relates to the European university, university networks that will be applying. There was a question, and I also wanted to ask you this: will there be some specific funding earmarked for those applicants, for those joint programs, or will they be in competition with everyone who is applying?
They'll be in competition. There's no specific advantage, so to say, giving it a more chance of getting a joint master grant because you are involved in a European university. at least to my knowledge.
And in the, sorry,
I confirm there is no advantage, even if we encourage national agencies or the EAKIA to favor synergies. So to encourage the European universities to apply for Key A1, Key A2 projects, but we don't give any priorities.
So in the award criteria, there will be nothing for the European University Alliances.
Yep.
Well, I was thinking because there's going to be 25, 26 joint, 25 masters are planned to be funded this year, and we have 41 European university alliances. And I was thinking, won't they have the advantage per se when they apply, because they can? It's more easy. It's easier for them to justify the strong cooperation that they already have.
You can perhaps see it the other way around. I mean, in the sense, well, if they have such strong cooperation, they're going to have to demonstrate it in the application for the Mundus action. You know, perhaps our expectations will be higher also when seeing the applications. So it goes both ways. I think the proposal itself has to be and evaluated and looked at, and the sense that it makes. It's not really in relation to where they're coming from, if you see what I mean. So that will need to be described, and then whether it's based on a dedicated collaboration specific to the Mundus program, or based on a relationship which has been developed through the European universities. That's the background. Yeah.
And we should avoid a double funding for the same activities. Yeah. So it's very important. You have to justify that it is something new in comparison with what was in your application. So. Yeah.
Thank you for the clarification. I'm asking this maybe on behalf of the universities which are not part of the alliances, and they would like to apply for the Erasmus Mundus Joint Masters, which I believe there was a slight drop in the applications in the recent years, right? This is why the design measures are coming.
Exactly. Yeah, well, we really want to encourage universities that haven't, participated in Mundus through the design measures. That's sort of the idea there, to widen participation. And I noticed quite a few questions, on that, on those who have more experience. Can they help perhaps support? And there again, I don't think there's no reason why they shouldn't, but the aim is really to support a group of universities to get up and be able to deliver this program together. And it's up to the consortium then to work out, what they're going to put forward as a proposal.
Yes, and we have also a specific question on the design measures, if they will be available to all institutions, also for those who are already part of some of the joint masters, or this is only for the newcomers. I think this is quite important to clarify.
Yeah, I don't, to my knowledge, there's no exclusion criteria saying that you can't if you already have a master running, but I think you'll need to explain exactly the role of this university in the design measure. I think the colleagues there in the chat was suggesting they have a sort of a support role, etc. But in the end, there's funding being given, so it must be clear, that the extent of their participation and whether that's justified financially.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And the preparatory year will remain as it was before once the project is selected.
Activities they're called. So it could be longer, shorter. It can't be. The additions must be in place 1 year after the project has been selected.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. And also we had a question on the joint degrees versus double degrees. I know that this has been a pressing question for many years, and that the kind of the position by the Commission is that joint degrees is something to be pursued when national legislation is allowing this. Does this still remain the principle?
Yeah, it'll still remain the principle. So you're striving to, but what the model will then be based on what's possible from a legislative point of view.
You know, perhaps if there has been any, sorry, Nadia. Yeah.
No, go ahead. I think you were going to ask something related to what I was going to say.
I'm curious to ask if there has been any communication with the member states regarding these policies. If there is, I know that the practice differs in many countries. Some of them don't even recognize the joint degrees. Others have pretty developed legal background to it. So I wanted to ask if you could give us some updates on how is this standing at the moment.
I think that's more for Nadia.
Yes.
Yeah.
So actually, I was also gonna say something about this. So recently, there's been a very good study published looking at the Erasmus Mundus degree arrangements, the experience within Erasmus Mundus, specifically on this point. So what kind of it really analyzed the arrangements that the consortia were able to reach. You know, is it a joint degree? Is it a double degree? Is it a multiple degree? Where are they recognized? Who do they speak to? What are the national legislative frameworks in each of the countries? And based on that, the finding of the study is that there is great variety in the types of qualifications that are awarded, a great variety, and often there is a great variety in titles as well. They differ by language of the country, so sometimes a student can end up with as many as 5 to 8 different titles. Titles, I mean, in different languages. They could be the same qualification but different titles. This and other challenges around this, with the differing national legislative frameworks about joint program qualification delivery, has led us to suggest to explore the work of a European degree. This was announced in the European Education Area Communication already in September last year, and we really got down to business on that front. And in January this year, we launched a call to a contractor to work on a study over the next 15 months to scan the situation. So I think it's a good moment. You have quite a lot of participants here to say that we want to work with stakeholders, institutions, governments, students, Erasmus Mundus consortia, Marie Sklodowska-Curie consortia, and also European University Alliances, to discuss what are the barriers to the delivery of joint degrees at the moment, and what would we like the delivery of joint degrees to look like in the future. And not just joint degrees, but I am really emphasizing this, the modern degree based on the transformative higher education. So everything that Vanessa spoke about yesterday, if you were there, you know, modular, flexible study, all of that, how do we reflect that in a European degree that also strengthens the reputation of higher education in the EU? So there you go. We are working on this particular European degree possible policy line.
Thank you.
I think the study is published on the executive agency's website, on Mundus, the Mundus website.
And just if you could give us a terminological clarification, because we're talking about joint degrees and now a European degree, which I think is a step further than from a joint degree, right? So what?
Yes.
So this will kind of feed into this European degree once in a few years we have this in place.
Yeah, it's perhaps a bit confusing, but I encourage you to look at the study because it really proposed a definition of the different degrees, and for the first time really laid it out. What is a joint degree? What is a double degree? What is a multiple degree at the same time? And what are the different ways? There are multiple ways in which these degrees at the moment in Erasmus Mundus are given, sometimes with a signature of one university, sometimes with a signature of 4, of 6. It's a really what the main point is. It's a bottom-up approach. So at the moment, these partnerships have had to find their own way of dealing on a case-by-case basis, and some of them have been extremely successful, but we realize that it's not really a long-term solution. It's not very efficient if every partnership has to work with all the national authorities and with all the different institutions in order to find a solution that only works for them, because then the student ends up with the qualification that is not necessarily strong and recognized everywhere. So this was the sort of one of the motivators, or one of the drivers of this idea of a European degree. But not only that, but also the fact that European universities have sort of signed up, alliances have kind of signed up to delivering this transformative higher education, and the standard national qualification by a nationally accredited institution simply does not fit that model anymore. It's outdated. So that's why we're talking about a future European degree, but we are defining it with stakeholders in this study over the course of the next 15 months.
Thank you very much for these explanations. And similarly, I would like to ask about the European approach to quality assurance, which is also something that is pretty relevant, quite relevant for the joint masters. So if you could give us an update where we stand now, if you have some numbers, how many of the existing Erasmus Mundus joint masters have it in place? I think that would be interesting to hear.
I'm not exactly sure, to be honest. I know that there'll be a lot more emphasis on that in the next phase of Erasmus Mundus, in the in the proposals themselves and in the evaluation. But I'm not sure what the level is at the moment. And I think I can check with the colleagues and get back after.
Maybe something I can add on this. I mean, we have some specialists among the participants as well. So I'm conscious there are people in the audience who know a lot more about this. But what I wanted to just mention here is that some European university alliances are really piloting now the joint European approach to quality assurance of joint programs. So the European approach being, you don't need to go to 5-6 different national accreditation agencies in order to get your program accredited, but there is a kind of series of steps that should make this process more efficient. And then this accreditation done by one chosen agency, quality assurance agency, should be valid in all the countries. This is being piloted. There are projects financed through Erasmus Plus, like Unique and IMPIA, which are specifically trying to move ahead. Yes, I see that Maria Kelo is also mentioning the same project. So Unique project and IMPIA, they're specifically trying to advance this, raise awareness about this European approach for quality assurance of joint programs. And I think we have had some quite good successes lately. And there are now more resources available to help European universities to apply this kind of joint quality assurance approach.
Thank you. And just to pick up on some of the questions from the Q&A box, also one of them relates to this and the design measures. So the question is if the design measures action will bring a stricter stance on joint accreditation. So if this will be part of the, let's say, the application for the new programs.
No, it won't be more strict than what it is at the moment. So the design measures, you'll be aiming towards that in the same way as the Mundus has been doing until now.
Okay, thank you. And then we had a question if the design measures would automatically lead to successful Erasmus Mundus joint master's application. Could you elaborate? No.
No. I mean, there's no sort of follow-through strategy. It's not automatic, shall we put it that way? At least not that I'm aware of.
No. But would it be possible then perhaps to go through a multiple design measures before applying for the master, or does it have to be only 1 year and then?
In principle, it would be 1 year. Like if you haven't done it, if you know, how can I put it? Well, it depends. I suppose it depends really on what you're aiming to do afterwards, to a certain extent. I mean, there's no automatic sort of passage from a design measure to a joint master, but there are, it doesn't have to be an Erasmus Mundus. This is the purpose of this. It could be other than Erasmus Mundus ultimately. So I don't think it's a lost, if you don't go on then to the Mundus, I don't think it's a lost opportunity in any case. But I prefer to consult the colleagues who are specifically in charge of Mundus to understand what's the thinking on that.
Thank you. And before we wrap up, we still have a question on the Jean Monnet actions, which were not really discussed today. So if any of you could give us some updates on this, and if you have some relevant news.
For Jean Monnet, at least from the perspective of the partner countries and the international dimension, my understanding is that partner countries will only be able to participate in the actions that are targeting higher education. So you might know Jean Monnet will now have a focus either on higher education or on schools, or the schools and teachers will not be accessible for partner countries. And for the higher education, what I know is that the first call will mainly be the modules, chairs and centers of excellence. So the projects and networks won't be available in the first call. And it's at least we're reasoning around the same way as before. You might know that some regions of the world put in additional funding to be able to have more Jean Monnet activities. I'm thinking of Russia, there was quite a lot, Ukraine, Latin America, I think. Well, that this idea is still there, but as we don't have the external financing yet, it wouldn't be for this first call in any case.
Thank you. And Nadia, maybe something from you on Jean Monnet? Okay, you're muted, but...
I am muted.
On Jean Monnet, I'm afraid I'm not an expert. I cannot share right now.
Okay, thank you. And I think we're slowly coming to an end of this session. So just to wrap up this really interesting discussion, thank you very much. I think there was a lot of new information that were shared. I think for the European Universities call in 2022, I think the clarification on who will be eligible is very important. So just to repeat this once again, this is for the existing alliances, but also for the newcomers in order to share the to spread the coverage of the higher education institutions. Also, thank you very much for I think what took most of our time is the discussion on the Erasmus Mundus joint masters, which have changed the name in the meantime from joint master degrees. So thank you very much on this. I hope this also clarified and gave some idea of the direction to where this action will be going in the next couple of years, but also for the new projects. I think I speak on behalf of all the 181 participants here at the moment, but also many other people working in the field across Europe and beyond when I say that we are eager to wait for the call to be out, the first one, and the work package, the work program, sorry, for this year also, and we will be closely monitoring and waiting for the news and the call. So thank you very much, Deirdre. Thank you very much, Nadia, and thank you very much, Fanny, also for stepping in. With this, I would like to close this session and hand over the torch back to Irina, who will introduce the next session.
Thank you for good sharing, Martin.
Yes, excellent. Thank you.